All right. Welcome, everybody, to the May 17th, 2023 Town Board meeting. And I just want to check in. People in Zoom, can you hear us? And you could, I guess your audio,
They can have to audio.
yeah. The audio's turned off? Yeah,
You have every shut off for everybody.
yes, they can hear us. They chatted back.
Oh, I see.
So we're all good. Great.
How many are on that?
Three or something, is that right, Jesse? Three people.
How many people? 8. Okay.
So I think we'll start the meeting with our pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will open the meeting with opportunity to address the board. And I have Julie Hanson first to speak.
Just for the board, I would encourage you to adopt the draft zoning law for Caroline. I think that protecting our agricultural resources and water resources is really important, and this zoning seems to focus on that quite a bit. We're the gateway actually to Tompkins County from New York City. So, you know, a lot of people come through our little town in particular, you know, more so than like Groton and Newfield and those areas. So we are more visible. We also, I mean, anybody in the world these days can zoom in to see what's happening here. Maybe they wouldn't, but still, I mean, the resources are available for people to get on Google Maps and see lots of things. So it's really time to protect what we enjoy here and why we like to live here. And I think zoning is really seems to be one of the main tools, or the only tool that really accomplishes that. I encourage you to adopt the draft. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Next up, we have Bruce Murray.
Okay, a lot of these people probably won't know what I'm talking about, but the board will. Last meeting, it was discussed about the distance from the stream or tributary in town of Caroline are protected by the DEC. And Bill sent an email out stating that, you know, he apologized, he was wrong on some of this. And the language said that, you know, the bank of a tributary or a protected stream means that the land area immediately adjacent to which slope towards the bed of the water course, and which is necessary to maintain the integrity of the water course. The bank will not be considered to extend more than 50 feet horizontally from the mean high water line, with the following exceptions: where a general uniform slope of 45 degrees or greater adjoin the bed or water course, the bank is extended to the crest of the slope or to the first definable break in the slope, either a natural or constructed road, or so on and so forth. Bill said he found the language confusing and states that it could be shorter in certain circumstances, which is not right. Then he got a thing back from Jean Foley. When he questioned it, she said, yes, they're classified all the different streams that in Caroline that are protected by the DEC. And the definition of the bank that he reported in the previous mail, he said there is relatively consistent slope of 45 degrees or more in the bank. This means that the high water level of the first break in the slope, if there is no such steep slope, then the regulated bank area is no more than 50 feet from the mean high water level, which is the same thing. 50 feet is what we're talking about. And it said a bank will not be considered to extend more than 50 feet horizontally from the mean high water line. He goes on and says that Mrs. Foley's main point was, in her experience in our area, most streams fall in a 45 degree or more slope case. Often the break in the slope is closer than 50 feet from the mean high water level, and the break determines the end of the DEC's regulated area. far as I'm concerned, that's just conjuncture. If you talk with DEC, they'll come out and look at it. They will tell you what's what. Bill goes on to say the DEC is likely to regulate things here and there, and if they're not likely to, they will regulate what happens. And they do come out, because I've had them out to my tributary. Her other main point was that she thought it was a good idea to maintain 50 foot away from a stream simply because streams move. But then Bill's bottom line, I have a real problem with his bottom line. He said it is not accurate to say that the DEC regulates 50 feet around the stream. Some portions of some streams are regulated out to 50 feet. But that is the minority, not the majority case in Carolina. I don't know where he got those figures from. I don't know how he comes up with any kind of facts stating that that's not the case in Carolina. As far as I'm concerned, that's just conjecture. And I would ask the town board before they can make any kind of an educated decision on the watershed or the overlay, that they need to bring a few professionals from the field like Gene Foley or John Nagley before them so that they can discuss the watershed and know exactly what they're talking about. Because the zoning commission did not have them, and there's a lot of unknowns. I, for one, was on it and I don't understand it all. And Bill was more or less the main person on the zoning commission looking into these things. And it is clearly demonstrated in his emails, he truly doesn't understand it all either. So, because this affects to make a decision like this, it affects so many people, it should be, the board should be based on solid facts. So I think it'd be great if you would confront some professionals on this to find out exactly what we can and can't do around the streams. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Welcome, Catherine. All right.
There's one person on Zoom now.
Mr. Hoyt, do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I thought I'd heard it all. I thought I'd already said it all. You guys are sick of hearing from me, which I probably was valid sometimes. But I feel that I must reply to what this lady said in the beginning. I mean, I really thought that I had heard it all, but to justify.
Point of order. Yeah, so the privilege of the floor is to provide information to the board, but not to direct comments to other speakers or add other speakers.
So I will rephrase. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see it as irrelevant and somewhat foolish to assert that a justification for zoning would be to provide a proper gateway to Tompkins County for people coming from out of town so that things may look appealing to them. I'm sorry, that blew my mind that I had to address that. I had not want to let that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyt.
Harrison Cather, County.
Oh,
Ellen Harrison.
okay. Thank you. I'm having trouble hearing you. So, can you unmute her? Yeah. Okay. Ellen Harrison?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, thank you for your time. As you already know, I am delighted that Caroline is looking at zoning, and I hope that we will see zoning enacted. I wanted to talk to the point of sort of the role that I hope the board will play. Obviously, this is a local law. The board will determine the content of the law and vote on it. I'm concerned that the zoning commission appointed by the town board, and it was a very, they did an amazing job. They worked for over 2 years, meeting, I think, twice a month for the most part. They had the services of a qualified professional who, when I heard what she was doing and saw what she was doing, she seemed to be doing a heck of a good job. So I was a bit concerned at the last meeting by the sense that people were saying to the board, you need to go line by line through this zoning draft. And frankly, if I had served on the zoning commission and I felt that I was being completely second guessed by the board and that they were not actually using a consultant who knows a lot more than any of us do, who's a lot more experienced, I would have thought, why did I waste my time for 2.5 years slaving away to try and do a really good job? So I think your role is to look at the bigger picture. I think your role is to assess some of the specific comments, things that were like, are the hamlets, do they make sense? Are they in the right place? Is the location of the denser or larger scale commercial area in the right place? Does that make sense? But I think to go line by line, one, I don't see how you can do it without spending 2.5 years, took them that long. So I guess what I'm saying is you need to, I hope, think very hard about what your role is in this. And obviously you have a tremendous responsibility, but to me, it's not the line by line, it's the bigger picture and it's some of the bigger questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Is there anyone else on Zoom that wants to speak? No. Okay. Great, thank you, everybody. So I'm gonna move on.
Oh, hold on,
Oh,
there's one, sorry. Are you? One person before this.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Catherine Seeley.
Oh, hi, Catherine. Yep, go ahead.
I live on Burnt Road. I apologize. From work, have so many windows open. I hit the wrong link or wrong unmute. So I would just like to, I really appreciate all the effort and the hard work everyone has done. And I agree with Ellen that the people on the zoning commission have spent an inordinate amount of time doing this. And yes, hired a trusted professional and professionals, I'm not clear of everyone, to do this good work and to dig into the deeper issues. And I, in a previous time in my life, had served on a committee and spent 2+ years of my life creating a documentation with another community member. And once we did all our homework and we brought it to the board and we had enlisted professionals to examine what we had done and we answered the board's questions and we brought it again, we felt we really did our due diligence. We were then shunned by community members, which is fine. You know, when you want to enact a little positivity or change, people resist. But I guess to echo Ellen's point is that you entrusted community members and professionals to outline these points. And yes, there are some that are not agreeable to everyone. It's your job as the town board, I would hope, to push back, to be familiar, but also to keep in mind that you entrusted this committee, they did what they could do. And then we as voters trust the town board members to make a decision. And we really do. And so I want you to remember the people who did all that work, because if you continue to listen to the loudest voices in the room and not always the voices that don't always come with their pitchforks, and I hate to be that way because I was violently attacked, you're going to lose volunteers. I would have loved to be on the commission, and I tried to be in the beginning phases, but when volunteers of this community who come out there and who really put the work in are then not listened to, like Ellen says, not trusted, it's hard. It's hard, and you're going to lose community members. I mean, you're gonna lose people. But I do know your role is hard and I appreciate it. And I appreciate you making a solid decision. And I know it takes time. And that's all I want to say is remember the people that put in the work just as hard as you do, to bring points forth. Thank you. And to my husband wanted to say, and we voted all of you into office, which is 100% true. So we do trust you. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
Laser,
Oh, okay, yeah.
one more.
Hi, welcome. Do you,
Here I am, okay. These Zoom things are all a little different from each other. My name's Bob Reminick, otherwise known as Laser Plum Bob. I live on the corner of Level Green and Blackman Hill. Been here since 1984. I looked at a bunch of this stuff, this zoning stuff. Must have been close to a year ago already. And I, like a lot of people, I'm sure, have to compartmentalize that I can't keep up with it and analyze it on a regular basis, as opposed to just getting a sense of it. And so I'm following it. I think it's a good idea. It's probably a really good idea. I think it's important. What I'm trying to say that's important here today is that this is an interesting piece of little local democracy in action, and it's not working entirely through the ballot box. I mean, yeah, we voted for you guys. I don't even know who's sitting there right now, but I'd guess I voted for a lot of you. Which is part of the point, but what's happening that's interesting is people are trying to vote with their voices on a constant basis. They're trying to say, hey, look, we got more people complaining this way, we got more people complaining that way, and it's an interesting approach. But I would point out that those of us who are happy with the work that's being done are way less inspired to be like standing up and speaking out loud to make sure that we're heard, because we think we start out feeling like we're being heard. And the visuals of all the signs and all the people, and I don't know what's been going on in all the meetings since the meetings I was at, 2 of them last year, it could be that it's fairly important for people like us to simply stand up and say, I agree, the idea of having zoning is a good thing, because otherwise you guys don't really know how many people agree or don't agree. And like I say, there's these visuals which could be misleading, or it could be telling. It's hard to say. But I think it's on us, the people, everybody who's listening and all your friends, and the board, to realize as well too that people just simply need to say. I think personally, Bob thinks that times are changing, things are expanding, population is increasing, pollution's increasing, all kinds of people are taking abuse of situations when they can, and that's why we have laws. And as the density goes up, there simply is going to be need for more laws to protect us from that density. That's why people like me think this zoning is probably a good thing. It's probably going to protect us. And it's almost inevitable. We're going to have it, but are we going to wait until we got problems that we desperately needed and it's too late to solve some of those problems? Or are we going to prepare? And I feel like I'm leaning towards the cautious, preparing. I love the way it's been reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. It should be as, everybody should have an opportunity, if they think there's a problem with it, to point it out. But anyhow, I just wanted to express, A, that I support it, and B, that other people probably support it need to be encouraged to stand up and say, by the way, yeah, if you don't stand up, there might be a problem, and it becomes undemocratic, which is a difficult thing to measure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Very good point.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Thanks, everybody. So I would like to move the update from the Ag Committee up to the next item. People are okay with that?
Sure.
So I'll welcome Monica Roth and Erica Frenet. You're welcome.
I'm up here, so I don't have to yell
Yeah,
from the back.
great,
Oh,
great. So take it away, Monica.
Okay, thanks, and nice
Yeah.
to see you all. I think everybody has seen me at least once at a meeting. I'm Monica Roth, the folks on the screen, if you don't know me. I worked at Cooperative Extension for like 40 years and worked on ag plans and for other towns too in the county. So, and I'm working as a consultant with the town. So our big effort since January has been, we held a farm community meeting on April 6th. That was a lot of planning, and at the same time, we also worked on developing a survey that was to go out to the community. Both some of it was mailed, some of it we got surveys back at the meeting, at the April 6th meeting, and then additionally, some people filled them out online. Put a little, a link to an online site. So at April 6th, we had a total of about 42 people. Not everybody signed in, which we were happy about. It was a nice mix of small farms, large farms. Our committee was well represented, so we appreciated that all the farmers that are on the Ag Committee were there. And then we had people at that meeting provide answers to a discussion. Most of the meeting was discussion. We had people provide answers to some questions that we had posed, and Erica went through the summaries from each discussion table and prepared a summary document, which I did share with Mark. So if you're interested in seeing that, he can get it to you. And then, the main thing, these were wide open questions, more about what do you think we should do to preserve agriculture? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? So we have lots of ideas. Plus we've had ideas from, Will had done some earlier interviews of people last year. So we're in an idea gathering phase, information gathering and idea gathering. The information we're gathering is we're trying to get some data so we can describe what's going on in agriculture. That's unfortunately, the survey was probably a few pages too long, but anyhow, it was a long survey. It didn't take that long to fill out because it was all checkup. But at any rate, so we're trying to get some data together to be able to say you have these kinds of farms in the town. This is sort of what people are doing, what their goals are, all of those kinds of things. That's coming together. And then the ideas at the same time are coming from people in the farm community, people that have small farms, people that are landowners renting to farmers. So we're trying to get, a wide range of ideas, people that have been long-term landowners and more recent landowners. So to date, we don't have a ton of surveys. We have 30 that we have completed surveys. We still want to get more. And, we are trying to keep the survey open on the website, but this is like I'm shifting from that kind of passive approach to trying to get more active in terms of actually going out.
So were they mailed out?
They were mailed out. They were mailed to about 80 people who received agricultural assessment. That list came from the county. They were mailed to smaller farmers that don't get ag assessment, the under 10,000 in sales. And Erica has been collecting those names and Extension had a bunch of names too, that we put our list together, so we probably mailed about 120 altogether, and some came back, one came back definitely, you know, it was not a, it was a 1 acre parcel somebody had, so we didn't have that. Anyway. But so, yeah, so we did a mailing to the people we felt we had good addresses for. You know, it's an interesting process so far. Those 28 farm landowners and farmers represent 2,500 acres. It's quite a lot of acreage, but I know there's more acreage in the town than just that. You know, and it included both long-term owners and more recent owners. Obviously, I think everybody probably knows that there are only 2 very small dairy operations left doing more direct to consumer sales. And then certainly there's a nice mix of diverse newer farms, which is exciting to see the variety of farms. Lots of mixed enterprises, because it's usually, you know, you kind of go from homesteading, and a lot of those people that I would say sort of are in the homesteading realm are their goals. They express the goal to expand. I went through the database and sort of marked the ones that had indicated they wanted to expand. So it's quite a few, which is nice. I mean, you know, and the expansion is really just into, you know, things that we eat. So fruits, vegetables, meats. Some people mentioned.
So diversifying what they grow is what you're.
Yeah, they're just interested in sort of small scale production, but then expanding what they're doing. And some people mentioned, you know, a little bit of added value product opportunities. Some mentioned agritourism was mentioned quite a few times. And that is an interesting, you know, exploration. I think the town should, we will look into that a little bit. You know, what are they really thinking of as agritourism? What are their goals in that realm? I've done agritourism assessments for many farms in different counties. And so, you know, we kind of evaluate the resources that people have and, you know, what could they do with the land, the types of enterprises that they, you know, envision. Does it actually fit? Maybe it's better to.
Right.
Like, I mean, I went to Tioga County, there was somebody who wanted to do like a camping, glamping kind of camping enterprise. You know, they had a wonderful site right next to state land. So, you know, evaluating, well, you know, what resources do you have, your land, your buildings, you know, that could fit with agriculture. I'm hoping I can follow up with some people. The other thing is we might just do a workshop related to that.
Great idea.
And equine seems like it's also a popular activity in the town. And so there's, you know, an interesting mix of emerging enterprises, I would say. And again, many of them are not, they don't have sales yet, but some of them do have that ambition. Let's see, and in this case, certainly unlike other towns, you know, practically none of the farms hire people, only one of the respondents, at least. So most people, you know, maybe they have a seasonal employee, even, but very few people hire their labor. So it's still really maybe the farmer, and sometimes that's just part-time, often it's part-time. Let's see, sorry, I'm probably going on too long.
No, that's
No.
great.
So, you know, the, some of the land use concerns that they raised, obviously, are zoning, solar, development on good farmland. That's a huge issue up in Lansing.
Yeah.
So, just, you know, they're concerned about development pressure. That was mentioned quite a few times. And there's the concept that has been talked about at the Ag Committee of food freedom, food sovereignty, mainly the ability to, you know, farm what you want to farm, essentially, and be able to not have so many. There are a lot of government, you know, state level food, sort of food regulatory restrictions make it hard to process anything on your farm. or anything like that. So whether, it's hard at this level to change state regulations or federal regulations. So I also started, as I go through the surveys, I have the opportunity to kind of start thinking about ideas. And so that's a little bit of what I've been going through. I think hay is gonna remain a strong sector in the town. I think local products for local sales, there's a lot of interest in cottage industry development. I think there ought to be looked at, we did get quite a few surveys from farms that are used to be farmed, they're being rented to a farmer. And I think we should think about ways to maybe see, could that farmland be, somehow transitioned to a younger farmer wanting to start out. That's something I'd like to look into. So, I just spent a little time driving over to Penn and look at the countryside there and the amount of Amish and Mennonite farming. It is so active, but I don't know if that could happen here. It'd be nice.
Amazing. So there's a lot down towards Newark.
Yeah,
Valley.
it's going that way too.
A lot of the Amish are
They-
down there, but we don't really have any.
They say they don't want to come to Tompkins County because our land prices are too high. And we're a little bit too close to sort of that development. Too much, development. So that's a little bit about what we've gathered so far this summer. I hope to do a little bit more on the ground out in hinterland and see what's happening up there. We do have a team all in place now, which includes myself. George France will help with part of the land use trends section and zoning review. And then we also have the extension team. They've just hired a land use, she's working on with our county ag and farmland protection board, but she's going to be working on this. She works on ag district reviews, but she worked in the planning department maybe 8 years ago, and I knew her there, and so I'm very excited because she has really good qualifications and very solid, and has a little farm herself in Indiana. So I'm looking forward to the team. We have also hired a Cornell student, so all of us, there'll be 4 people kind of putting some energy into this. So we ought to roll pretty quickly now. As we get through this fall.
Great.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, questions for Monica?
Did you fill out your form?
Bruce?
Okay,
Yes,
good. Okay, good.
Am I understanding you're still taking surveys?
Oh,
Okay.
I should have brought it.
Is there a way?
There are, if you go to the town website, and under that. Click on it and do it online. Great.
Would it be
Can we
helpful
put a
for
link
us?
on the first page of our town website?
And you know, just ignore the part that says the deadline was April 10th.
Maybe we could send out another
A reminder.
solicitation over the listserv, town
Announcement.
listserv announcing it.
Yeah.
It's still open.
Yeah, this here, she's the chair of the committee, so. Comment.
Covered it up.
I was, a particular thing that's come up, it came up with the board with this food sovereignty idea. And for me, it would be helpful for me to understand the particulars of what those hurdles are and how they could be, how modifying or eliminating them would help, smaller producers. Just talking with friends and neighbors, their immediate reaction, not everybody, but one reaction was, we want our food to be safe, so.
That's so-
I have a lot to say about it. I'd love to talk to you sometime about that.
Erica's
Okay.
much more up on that.
Do you want to say it now, or do you want to?
No,
just
I don't think we need to.
at the ag meeting or-
No, but I think we all, though, as a committee, we need to learn more about food freedom legislation. There are, I mean, Monica's right, it's not something that really like can be affected at a town level because the
Right.
regulations are imposed by counties or states or the federal government. But you have to start somewhere. And there are other states that have enacted statewide food freedom legislation. And so, I mean, I would like to know more about how that legislation came about and what exactly it allows and doesn't allow, and how it has made things easier for farmers and how it's impacted food safety, because that is, of course, the most
Yeah.
common thing that people bring up. But I could, yeah, one of the things I can tell you is about how the regulations that are theoretically about food safety are not in any way making the food that I produce any more safe. So.
Yeah, so, okay, I'll look forward to
It's,
hearing more.
you know, it's the age-old problem of scale.
Right,
And the reality, the regulations are made for the really big farms.
Right.
But they don't.
One
Or
side.
grocery stores, like we have to comply, as a teeny tiny little farm enterprise, like we have to comply with the same thing that Wegmans does,
mhm,
so.
I mean, when you have the information.
Yeah,
ready
we'll
to
certainly
deliver,
come back and share it.
I mean-
Basically, the committee is moving into the direction, we've been, like Monica said, we've been gathering information.
right,
To develop the profile of our town. And
understood,
now we're going to move into the phase of talking about all these great ideas that have come up and figuring out what recommendations we collectively think need to go into the plan.
great,
And so there will be a lot of lively discussion, I'm sure.
And what I was gonna say is, once there's something concrete, I think another thing that we could do is invite Anna Kellis, who's our assembly person, to come out here and talk about this with us.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
you know, just to get the ball rolling on the ground level. I'm sure she'd be willing to do that.
And it's a lot of stuff too, that, I mean, Pete's very active in Farm Bureau and Cal, you know, it's stuff that we can also bring to Farm Bureau and they take it as a state as a recommendation from our county to the state policy. Like.
cool. So have those kinds of ideas been sort of threshed out by other towns with farmland protection plans, or the county, or?
Not so much,
Is it-
but
okay.
you know, the concern about regulations is always brought up.
Yeah,
You know,
Sure.
overburdensome regulations.
Yeah.
is a
Sure,
common thing.
sure.
And, but that's a good point. It's something that's why we have this student who we're gonna set on research. That's a good research project for him to see what kind of regulatory recommendations.
Fabulous.
any other questions for Monica or Erica?
Thanks.
Thank you so much for,
Okay, and I don't know if you wanted to talk about that contract at all or
sure, we could do that now.
do that
now.
Yeah, I think that'd be
not.
great.
I'll just.
Makes sense.
put that in
Yeah.
case there are questions.
Go for it. Yeah, so,
Oh, I mean, I don't need to talk about it. but if you want.
oh, okay.
Yeah, let's do that now,
Let's do that
now while you're.
So anyway, I shared Monica provided the contract for, to engage additional personnel at Cooperative Extension, and so I shared that with you. Seemed to make sense to me, and that's part of your team, right? So.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, and this is like the final part of the contracts, you know, it's the money is obviously in the grant, it was in the budget. And we were intending initially to hire a year, you know, an intern. My vision was I could find a graduate student who might make this a master's project, but that didn't work out. So we are continuing with the process of getting a summer intern through the city and regional planning department, which is where the student is from. The department pays half of the salary and we pay the other half, which is.
Great.
Then the rest of the time, we're now, since Crystal Buck, who is the new ag planning, person in our extension.
Mhm.
She is gonna actually do some of the work that we would have hired a graduate student, for longer hours for that. So she's gonna do some of the work. So, rather than find somebody else, we have somebody in place who can do this work. And so
Great.
we're all looking forward to that. We have a meeting next week. with the ball rolling.
Fabulous.
Great.
So the memorandum, quite honestly, I just took the memorandum I have with the town of Dryden, between extension and the town of Dryden and Lansing, so it's based on past memorandum of other towns. And customized it to what extension will be doing in relation to them.
Great. Any other questions about the memorandum?
Very straightforward.
Great, seems straightforward. So I'll offer a resolution to authorize the signing of the memorandum.
Second.
Second by Catherine. Any further discussion? I'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great.
Thank you.
All done.
Thank you.
So, yeah,
Getting to work.
thanks, Monica.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I will now circle back to my brief report. And
Oh, yeah.
so I just, the first item is something that a vexing item that we've been grappling with for a while with county IT and the town of Danby to try to figure out how to correct addressing problems on Deputron Hollow Road. So
You mean like mailing addresses?
yeah,
Okay.
the mailing addresses for properties, and just based on the history, it got to the point where there were lots where there were no addresses left because of coming together at the border. So, and actually this points to something that we are, I think it's one of the easy things that we're identifying in the county code enforcement study is to have county IT be the lead on addressing assignments. So that'll be great. So anyway, but this is something that's already happened. So, and I'm grateful that Steve Courtwright, the code officer in Danby, who's helped us out before, he's put forward a plan to Caddy-Ann Campbell at the county, who's the IT person. And so we've come to an agreement. So now we're just figuring out what the right process is for working with the affected properties. How we do this, is it by board resolution or do we local law or whatever? So that just, so we're working on that, and we need to resolve it soon because it's been a
So are there like incorrect addresses on deeds and things that are recorded in the courthouse?
Oh, that, yeah, I mean, that's the problem with it, is that you're changing the mailing address for the property,
And
so.
the people on their income tax returns and it's
Exactly.
probably a nightmare past.
Yep, that's why it's trouble. But there is a way to do it, and it needs to be done because,
Yep.
we're between a rock and a hard place now, and we need addresses, so.
And the road's not seasonal there, right?
Pardon me?
The road is not seasonal
I
in
don't
that
think so.
location.
That's not my understanding, right, so. Yeah, I can follow up with Steve on that.
Okay.
Good point.
My only comment about it, which I made last time, was just it for the county to take over, which I totally support. My only, just to be really aware of the
They would have
seasonal
to be-
road issue, because here the assigning of addresses has a lot of other implications
Mhm.
on a seasonal road. So I just wouldn't want that to be overlooked.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts or questions about that?
Oh, it's great that this is happening.
Yeah, so good.
Good, so. Our little TCOG subcommittee, that was tasked with, revising the TCOG bylaws, we finally, after many arduous, emails back and forth, change one word and it changes everything else, and it's, anyway, it was a lot of fun, but we're putting that forward at the May 25th meeting, and hopefully that'll go swimmingly. Kate and I are meeting bi-weekly with Hunt Engineering, Ryan from Hunt Engineering, on the broadband feasibility study. And we have a survey. It's posted on the website. People can and should take it. And there's a link to a speed test you can do. And it's really fun. I did it. I was successful, so that means anybody can do it. And then you can put in the speed for at your home.
That'd be a big fail first.
So anyway, and this information will be helpful as we move forward. So we will be putting a paper copy in the next newsletter. But honestly, it's much easier and more fun to do the online link version, but
But a lot of people don't have online service, and that's
right,
the whole idea, is to get input from there
exactly.
too.
So
So, yeah, that's why it's getting mailed out, so encourage people, everybody listening, encourage people to send it in.
I just noted that Cliff submitted a report for the last month of permit activity. And
We have that. from them?
it's, I forwarded it by email, so it's in your email. It's from April 15th to May 15th, I think. He did it just the other day.
Huh.
If maybe I didn't.
I don't think I have that, no.
Nothing from me.
Yeah, let me see.
Tuesday,
I don't think so.
I don't think I have it.
Okay, I'll forward it to you.
Okay. Anything notable?
It wasn't remarkable.
Okay.
No.
I'll forward it right now.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, I don't have it.
And you can let me know if you see anything remarkable.
Okay.
And Labella provided the draft of the contract document, and I've had the attorney pro review that, and I'm now working with Labella to get that worked out so I can get that work moving on the highway barns. So that's my report. I also will mention that Ecruz Road is moving along, so we should have an RFP. We got the Army Corps permit the other day. We should be moving forward to put out an RFP relatively pretty soon, so June, I believe.
Great.
Okay,
And
any questions?
Banks Road.
Banks Road
Not
is,
Banks Road, but you know, what I mean, the
yeah, the creek, there.
creek up.
So that
Oh,
work
good.
is in progress.
I
Yeah,
suppose.
I don't have an update on it.
Yeah. it's-
And can I just have a question about Cliff's report?
To talk about what?
A Cliff's report?
Oh,
So
yeah.
This is the permit, so does he submit about subdivision as well? Lot line divisions and everything, like this is just permits, but. is
That's
that-
just permits.
Can he
Um,
provide that,
So you're wondering if he submitted,
I mean, we have the information from Jesse in terms of the tax parcels, but now that tax season's over, I think,
Does he get that? I think that that's done at the county level, isn't it?
no, he gets it.
No,
He
he
does
does that.
He does it.
He's all exempt. He has to determine whether it's exempt or non-exempt.
Right.
yeah, so if it's exempt, he just,
I think there's been any in the last
Then-
month or two.
okay.
They usually get dropped off.
Thank you, okay,
I don't think so. I don't
okay,
think so.
let's dive down a bit, okay.
great, okay. Anything else before I move on?
No, sorry.
Okay. Town clerk's report.
Mine's pretty easy, just to letting everyone know as usual, I turned in my This report to Mark on May 3rd. And fees collected will total $951.42. And one other thing that I'm contemplating as we're getting into the summer months and things are quiet and minutes are taking longer. And I have a lot of interruptions during the day. I'm getting to the point where I'm at an impasse where I need to close a day during the week to the public so I can focus on, without being interrupted or get help and when I need it, so. We'll manage for this long on my own, but Velda is in my office and helps me way more than she has to. But it's summer and she has plans and, so I'm gonna put something in the newsletter when it goes out and just ask for feedback from residents and I'd like to hear if that would cause inconvenience if I closed another day just during the summertime.
You're surveying residents about that?
Yeah, I would like to.
Yeah.
I like I said, it's just something I'm considering till September, just try it out.
Oh, no,
was
I
thinking
support you
about-
doing it. I'm just worried about like, what are we gonna do? Like, I think you need that regardless. I mean, I support public engagement, but if people say, no, don't close.
No, I guess
should-
I'd like to know if it would be. If yes, somebody should be there during those office hours, if it's, even if it's not me, or, considering an evening instead of during the day, it's just having that time. Like I said, without the phone ringing and
Yeah,
people
yeah.
walking in, so.
Yeah,
Sure.
Do you need permission or something from the board to change your hours, or is
No.
it just up to you?
Yeah,
I guess I'm just putting it out there that it's something that I'm considering and I don't really wanna put another burden on the taxpayers to hire someone to come in when I can 99% of the time manage on my own. I don't want someone to come in and sit and do nothing, but I have a little bit of money left in my budget if that needs to happen, so it's something I'm thinking about.
I think as long as you can, if you say you can do this work in these days and you have one work day, that's, I'm just speaking for myself. I support that and I would support that. And period for me, like, yeah.
What about something like cutting a day, but adding an hour to each of the other 3 days?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
On Wednesdays.
Just do it.
Just do it.
I would say just do, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 1 of 5, but you're hearing everyone being very supportive, like just do what you need to do.
you need the relief, do it now, just do it.
Yeah. I just don't wanna, I'd rather have something scheduled than
Right.
just close when I
Sure,
need to out
sure.
of the blue and then people don't know
Right.
that I'm
No,
there. So
absolutely.
I get an admin day like any other person.
I'd like to have, scheduled time,
Right.
so.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that solves the problem, just so people know what to expect.
Right, right.
So have the quarterly news things gone out yet? No, can you put an announcement on that?
Mhm.
Just say what your hours are.
Starting May 18th, the hours are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well, we'll see how the summer goes, like I said,
Well, you
right
could just
now.
say it's summer hours then and just see how it goes.
Yeah,
And how it goes for you. I mean, you could also just be open in the morning, closed afternoon. I mean, there are different.
Yeah.
What works for you?
minutes are
Jesse?
tricky, it takes a lot of
Sure,
time.
of course.
and, Especially with deep conversation and sit through it, and then I go through the recording and stop and rewind and listen again and put my thoughts together and it's a lot of work, so.
And you
It's
do
hard
it
to
very
do that
rapidly,
when
you do
the
it very
phone-
rapidly.
Yeah.
Right, if people
It's
are
unbelievable.
talking about this or something like that, so.
Great.
Thank you, that's all.
Yeah, super. Problem solved.
Hopefully.
Great, thank you, Jesse. Any committee updates?
The transportation, the Tompkins County Transportation Council is moving ahead with the Safe Streets for All. I'm not directly involved in those. There's a subgroup of the 9 municipalities that are meeting to choose a firm to write, who will be writing
Great.
the plans for each of the town. And so they just got the bids, and so that's a lot of excitement about that. People are reviewing those, and so it'll be interesting to see what they recommend in the next couple of weeks, but hopefully this whole thing will get rolling, and we'll get the plan written. So, you know.
Great. Okay, anything else? If not, I'll move on.
You already went over the broadband pretty much where we are with that, so.
I kind of did.
Yeah, you did.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so I will move on to open the discussion of the zoning law. And I think last time we determined that we would discuss the water overlay. We've gotten a lot of good information and explanation. And I'll just give a brief summary that will not do justice to Bill's email, but the original intent of the overlay was to combine the flood zones, the FEMA flood zones, the DEC wetlands, and then the riparian buffer into a single thing that would be subject to the town regulations, whatever they might be. And so subsequent discussions have, I think, well, we need to, so I want to clarify that even though building in a floodplain is subject to the town's flood damage protection local law, the original overlay was an additional town regulatory tool that could determine what's allowed there. And so one thing, and so you could prohibit building in a flood zone. So so in subsequent discussions, the zoning commissions has discussed whether and the law here proposes that that floodplains are regulated by FEMA, that wetlands are regulated by the DEC. And so then streams and stream buffer areas would be something regulated by the town. And so so that's the broad brush. And so this draft proposes that perennial streams have an inner buffer area of 50 feet from the stream bank, and that there's an additional outer buffer area of 50 feet. And a limitation on what the maximum extent could be, depending on having a steep slope in there. And then intermittent streams would have an outer buffer area, so of 50 feet. So that's the proposal here as I read it. And so then since the last meeting and during the last meeting, and Bruce brought it up tonight about the DEC having authority to protect streams 50 feet from no more than 50 feet from the stream bank. So that's the basics.
One thing that that might be just helpful for us to talk about initially is the decision to combine the water resources and flooding overlay district. So that, and I think that that's most apparent in 5.3A on page 65. When a building envelope is supposed to be cited inside the water resources and flooding overlay district and approved by the board shall be required, any applicant who believes that project site or building envelope is not actually within a water resource and flooding overlay district may provide to the review board a survey. I'm
Wait, are
just
you on what are you, 55, 65?
65, page 65.
65A?
A?
65A, yeah,
Okay.
I'm just
I got
wondering
stuck.
whether, and this has to do with combining the three maps. I'm just wondering if, since we have a floodplain law, right? Why we're combining that with water resources without integrating the floodplain law per se? Or why not just keep it separate? I mean, that's just one practical question. It wouldn't change very much in this, but it would just could
you're saying
simplify the process.
Take the existing law and pull it in here, pull it into the.
I would just say keep it out, keep it
separate.
keep it separate. I mean, I haven't looked at that law, so I don't know how complicated it is.
Well,
And I think it was combined because of the initial thinking of overlapping the three maps to make it easier, somewhat easier. So that's just one thing we might just want to consider. We don't have to make a decision about that right away. Because it's not,
I see nothing wrong with just having all four maps in there.
well, that's a different issue. So I'm not talking about the maps. I'm talking about whether or not we're combining the water resources overlay and the flooding overlay
Yeah.
in this.
Yeah,
In this.
combining all
section
these
of
things into the
zoning
water
law,
resources.
into the zoning law.
Well, essentially the only thing that's new is the riparian buffer stuff.
Right,
It's just 1/3 of this whole thing.
right. So it might not make any
Well,
difference. It might just be easier. I just.
Yeah, I know, I agree with you.
Okay, so something that Bill wrote was that he wanted to emphasize that while the flood zone boundaries are not under the town's control, the flood zone regulations are,
Yes,
and those are the only regulations currently. But you're saying that the flood zone regulations are in a separate law
right now.
right
yes,
now.
Yes,
But in the original formulation or the original thinking proposal, all of these things would have been within the water resources and flood overlay district,
Okay,
subject to the provisions under that district. So it would have been regulated. That'd be an additional level of regulation, you know.
so maybe one thing that I should do is ask Nan what the implications would be were we to combine, where we combine the floodplain law with it, wrap it into the zoning law. I mean, that would be one thing to do.
I mean, yeah, I guess the question is like, it's seeming like there's 3 parts,
Oh, I see what you're
right?
saying.
There's wetlands, floodplain, and the buffer. And only one of those three is anything that's new or
Mhm.
changed, so. I mean, my assumption is just assuming, this is all done in like very good faith, like trying to be helpful, but I think like in the reader's aid box, the way it's described. That like this overlay arises from three components, right? Flood zones, wetlands, riparian areas, but the first two aren't. Regulate, I mean, I'm perfectly fine like looking at this and saying like, it says it's not regulated by a local law, but evidently that is confusing or upsetting to people, and so. If it's easier to make it simpler, the fact is that at least as the way I read it, and I think as Tim is reading it, we're really only looking at. A third of this information being like a new consideration for people. So if that's more palatable, I mean, I'm all for it. I just don't understand, like, I think it's a great question to ask Nan, like, why was it done in this way?
No,
Because I'm assuming there was a reason.
What I would want to ask Nan is. Would it complicate things just to put the flood?
You would just reference
Damage
that
and
as a
prevention
separate
law.
article.
Right.
It would be its own article.
Right.
Right.
Right, it's like all existing laws and subject to all existing laws, and like we're adding a riparian buffer.
So
I mean-
so it might just be easier. That's why I brought this up.
No, I
just to
agree.
Take the flood overlay district out of the zoning law and reference it. You know what I'm saying? Because the way that this is reading is that the water resources and flooding overlay district are one thing.
Exactly,
They aren't.
Right, so,
So,
and,
we're not.
Go ahead.
yeah, so I think my understanding of the rationale for combining these things, two of which are pre-existing, the FEMA floodplains and
Right.
the wetlands, is that you could, that you have them all in there and you say, well, we're absolutely not going to allow building within this overlay zone. And that's not true, that's not true for those things without the overlay, right? Because you can build in a flood zone. You can build in a DEC wetland if you get the permits.
Right. I see.
I'm
what you're
not
saying.
arguing for this, but that's my understanding.
That's right. You're right. You're
Okay.
correct.
That's my understanding of why that was proposed.
So then in that case, the town is just saying like, we want additional
Additional
protections, like
Exactly,
above and beyond whatever the permitting is for DEC and
right.
FEMA, so.
But then what we need to make sure is that this corresponds then with the floodplain law, with our local floodplain law. So I guess that's the question that we have to clarify.
And also for me, then it's about like what's enforceable, because the body that's gonna be, and not even enforceable, but like what's the practicality and like what's the knowledge base that people need to have, because if the town is to put more protections in, which might be a good idea, I'm not judging yes or no, but that then is regulated by the review board. And
Mhm.
I mean,
I guess,
our review board is like a group of, very lovely, like willing volunteers, but they're not. I would be interested to ask the review board, like, do you feel like this is within your purview of like, you will then be responsible for saying, can this thing be permitted? And I have some serious concern about that, not only in terms of what's like fair to a group of volunteers on a review board in a town of our size, but also just what feels like
well,
reasonable.
I
I guess,
think-
I guess what I envision it a little differently. I envision it like not as an enforcing thing. It's like somebody wants to build and they've got a wetland or they're in a buffer zone or they're in a floodplain. And they're like, can I build this? And they look at the map and they're like, oh, there's some questions about this. And they go to the zoning board and they ask for help.
Review board.
They're going
The
to
review
review.
board. They go to the review board and they say, what do I do? Look, and then they help them go, okay, we'll get in touch with the DEC and we'll get in touch with these people and they help people through it. I don't see it as I see it as more of a helping through, the existing regulations and what's going on. Not as an all-knowing board.
I'm
It's
not on
as
the
though-
review board, so I'm just suggesting we
Okay.
ask people who are
I-
on the review board.
And so, I'm that when there's a review board, that's when the DEC and the, you know, the federal review all gets triggered from, but it has to be a local law that triggers that state review.
Well, in
So-
terms of our current local law,
Mhm.
the flood prevention law,
Yeah,
and if we added this, what the only thing that the review board would be tasked with considering
mhm.
is whether a property falls within the map. The mapped out area. I mean, that's it. So it's pretty cut and dry, that there could be questions could arise where an applicant could question the validity of the map. Right, that's entirely conceivable, which is addressed in section A right away.
Right.
But it wouldn't be a matter of review board. I don't think it would be that complicated is what I'm trying to say.
I thought
Because
Mark was saying the whole reason for the wrapping it in was because, so that the town could impose additional protections if we wanted to, is that not right?
That's what I said earlier, yes, this is my
So
understanding.
then,
But
so then
are
that's the town's additional protections, right?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that for the review board.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. All the review board would be asked to determine is whether or not. The property fell within those protections or not.
But
Right,
I'm hearing, I guess I'm not sure, because that, who's determining the protections? My understanding would be like the local law determines the protections. And then the local law would also have to determine like,
Yeah,
what are the mitigating, so I want to put a building there, like, I need to do some different things. Someone needs to be able to help a person through, like, what do I need to do, like, and that seems to require some sort of content expertise, right?
our flood damage protection law now. Refers review to the review board,
right.
that they are the body that would review an application and.
Which is what happens now.
Okay.
Right.
Bruce, do you have a question?
Just consider the review board would follow whatever we have on board. And we would make recommendations to whoever it was that maybe this is what you could do or try to do. That's what I was told our job is a review.
Mhm.
To give them some kind of direction that possibly this could be done, or no, this is the law, this is what you have to follow.
I mean, I think. So to me, this is a little bit downstream from where we are right now.
Huh, nice water. Joe.
But what we want to do in relationship to the downstream is we want. What we settle on to be as clear as possible.
Right, I mean, that's my, yeah,
Yeah,
agree. My only reason in bringing up enforcement now is to say like, what are the implications
think
of
about it.
having this thing, like, and there's gonna be more to do, and that might be fine. I mean, it might be totally fine. I just wanna like make sure that it is fine.
you're saying if we separate them, there'll be more to do, you're thinking? Or
No, just if we,
if we put them together?
sounds like if we could put them together. I mean, the more additional things, I guess.
Well, they're actually, now that I look at, I mean, they're actually put together because D and E just refers back to.
Except those two laws, yeah.
Mhm.
So.
Yep,
Maybe I made them out of one.
yeah, I think,
Seems to me the most important thing that we can do is. Consider the buffers themselves,
Yeah,
mhm,
whether we want an inner buffer area and an additional outer buffer area, what the depth of the buffer would be. In relationship to the zoning commission's recommendation of 100 feet. Which in their introduction punted that back to us most specifically,
mhm.
saying you might not want it to be 100 feet.
mhm.
I personally am questioning now, just reading it back and forth, back and forth. I mean, I'm very much in favor of a protective buffer.
Mhm.
Maybe we don't need an inner and outer buffer, maybe a more modest, one modest buffer would suffice.
I agree with that.
And then we can consider what we might want not to have within that or not, but
Yeah,
I mean, I was
I
thinking.
like the 2 buffer idea because the one closer to the creek. It's a little stricter further out and gives. More, it gives more protection right close to the creek, even if it's smaller than 50 feet. Right, so, especially with impermeable surfaces, you know, the restrictions on impermeable surfaces right next to the creek. When possible, which is buildings, which is pavement, parking lots. And I think that is really important to have that, and then further out. Away from the creek, there's still some protections, right, but not as strict. I don't see a problem with having those two, I kind of like it.
Okay, I see the principle of what you're saying, but so if I look at three is the outer buffer area. 3B. It's on page 69. Within the outer buffer area, development uses are restricted to the following. All development uses permitted in the under buffer area. Minor recreational structures and surfaces to allow passive recreation in the outer buffer area, such as decks, picnic tables, playground equipment, and small concrete slabs. The total area of which is not to exceed 200 square feet each, and in aggregate occupy no more than 10% of the outer buffer area. Fences, provided such structures do not impede floodwaters, landscaping, mowing, decorative planting, or improvements that do not encroach upon or impact the integrity of the inner buffer area.
right, so
I
what
would-
of that is a problem, really, anywhere?
Like, I would be
Sorry?
comfortable with that uniformly applied, but maybe, I don't know.
I would too.
Wait, you'd be comfortable with that, you know, like the outer buffer area?
And inner buffer area.
Okay, so you would just have the inner buffer area and the outer buffer area, like, so you have all of that.
I would,
So-
well, that's just
So
a
you
thought.
just have just one buffer area, it would all be like inner buffer.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my thinking.
I mean, as I think about the areas that will be most explicitly impacted by this are the hamlets,
Mhm.
particularly Slaterville, West Slaterville, and Brooktondale.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I personally think that the 100 feet is just not gonna work in those areas, just practically speaking, it just doesn't work.
Mhm.
I could see, say, just hypothetically, 135-foot buffer area that would be just uniform for with the restrictions of the first buffer. That would really end up being roughly, if you measure, which I've recently done, various banks, roughly you've already got about a 15-foot buffer area next to the bank anyway, pretty much. In terms of, no, but in terms of what general growth is usually there.
Mhm.
It is, it's about 15 feet roughly. If you had a 35 buffer area, that would give you an additional 20 feet or capture, you know, for additional capture. And in the hamlet areas, that would already be relatively intense, just because of the nature of how the houses were built.
Mhm.
But you could pretty much do the inner buffer area restrictions with the 75% parcel coverage still
Mhm.
within that kind of a smaller buffer area that would serve the purpose of protecting the streams and the water systems. But being realistic about the kind of properties that we have in the town. I mean, I think this is a really idealistic plan.
So you're proposing 35 feet inner buffer
Just one
Just
buffer,
buffer.
just a buffer.
Buffer.
But as per, and the regulations would be as described for the inner?
I would think so.
So I was poking around different places. And I know that, Bill sent us a couple like Danby and some other hamlets, but I was looking for a place that had creeks. And so I looked at Trumansburg and they have almost the exact same wording, by the way. I mean, they have in the village of Trumansburg, they have 50 feet buffer. Riparian buffer established. They go on with a steep slope, but it's basically the same restrictions. And they go with 50 feet. And I know some of their houses are close to the creek. I walked around the hamlet in Brooktondale and actually, talked to people, went back to the backyards and we looked at things. And one person was concerned because she said, well, I want to put some, in addition at some point on my garage. And she's like, I'm not worried about it. We'll go and figure it out and do it in a safe way. I mean, that's kind of her attitude. She thought it was 100 feet was a bit much, right? But she thought the 50 feet that, something would get worked out. Somebody else said he wanted to put a deck, overlooking, because then you'd be able to see the waterfall. But decks would be allowed. A
Did
certain
you
size,
notice
though.
in Trumansburg, is that 50-foot buffer through is that for all perennial streams?
All perennial streams shall require riparian buffer and setback area.
Of 50 feet?
Riparian buffer is 50 feet. Setback is another 50. So they do have an outer buffer,
How big is
So-
it? Another
50.
50?
Another 50.
So 100. Oh.
So
Is that true in the village too?
this is the village.
Okay,
That is the village.
okay.
I mean, there's a lot of property in Trumansburg that doesn't, it's not like Brooktondale where everything's on the creek.
Or
Right.
Slaterville's even worse.
Right.
I mean,
Slaterville's terrible.
Slaterville's really
So-
tight.
Mhm.
And this can't be, I mean, the way it's phrased is like it's blanketing the whole town, right? But can this be zoned?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
sure.
So,
It
I
is zoned.
mean, but I
So
mean,
some-
like, can
some
we say
areas.
like in Slaterville, it's
Mhm.
whatever, 30 feet,
Yeah.
in Brooktondale, it's 150,
Mhm.
100,
You
and
could
then.
do that, or you could do it, or we could say. The hamlets, it's let's say 35 and. Outside of the hamlets,
And rural.
it's,
Yeah.
100 or more,
It's-
and
Mhm.
I mean,
it's more,
Yeah.
depending upon, we don't need to do it, but it could be more, so you easily could do that, sure. Which could be a reasonable thing to do.
I mean, that's responding to public concern. And it's responding to an attempt, which I think is important, to protect a public resource, which is water. I have some comments about other like specifics, but I don't want to go too far.
And that
afield,
could
but,
change depending upon what we decided. to
Yeah.
do.
I don't know.
Mhm.
Like, I don't have any problem with this being sorted out later with the review board in theory, but I think in practice, I'm just trying to imagine like what that is, and the composition of the review board changes. And like, I would just want the law to be like, I don't want there to be any room for subjectivity.
Right.
Like, there just needs to be like, this is the thing, so that the review board can say
Sure.
yes or no. And
Yep.
so, that's, I guess, my worry is that there's gonna be, like, if you have someone in Slaterville Springs who's like, the stream is right there and I want a deck, then it's still gonna be subject to some, like, a discussion of the review board at the time to say, is this okay or not okay?
Mhm.
And then a year and a half later, you're gonna have someone else 3 houses down in Slaterville wanting something else, and then it's, there's room for, like, I would love to think that this is not a problem, because everyone's just, like, looking out for everyone's best interest, but we have learned that that's not the case. So I would just wanna
Mhm.
I mean, I think.
protect us from our own behavior,
I think that
honestly.
we can be confident that our review boards have been very consistent in how they've taken into consideration what's come before them.
Yeah,
we have, they rotate in series, so you're not gonna have any time when there's gonna be a brand new review board. So there's history and consistency. I guess that's not something I would be overly worried about. My concern is to provide them with as clear a template as possible,
right.
and maybe as simple a template.
And
as
I think
possible.
that's what you're saying too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's
So,
what I'm saying.
and that's what I was arguing for as well.
Yeah.
So the simpler, the better. I did think that, it might make sense to have different buffer widths in the ag rural properties have more breathing room anyway. And, so
Things like.
maybe it makes sense to, I mean, where we're at is we have to decide on numbers. So,
Right. So what can I recommend, because we've got other business to do, and it's hard to do this, if we do meet on Tuesdays, alternate Tuesdays to do this, maybe we can come to the next meeting. The first thing we do is try to come to a decision about this, because it sounds like it's gonna be numbers. What we decide to do with numbers is then gonna impact how we read, how the rest of it reads. Right, in terms of the details that like you're worried about, Catherine.
Well, I
Because
mean,
I
my
do
stuff
think-
has nothing to do with the numbers. My stuff would be regardless of numbers.
No, but if we have one buffer instead of two,
Oh, right.
that simplifies certain things, in other words.
so is there, I mean, I kind of, is there a consensus that it makes sense to just have a riparian buffer? That would essentially be an overlay, and then the FEMA flood zones and the wetlands would stand on their own as well.
Right.
So,
Instead of having two, an inner and an outer have one buffer.
I'm in favor of that.
I would be in favor of that.
I'd be in favor.
I think that would simplify a lot of things.
Mhm.
I know that,
So you're saying then to make a smaller buffer, not have the outer buffer, which is also called, Trumansburg is called a setback, but okay,
we haven't decided on the width of the buffer yet.
okay. But it would all have the rules of the inner buffer area.
We haven't decided on that either.
I'm asking what he's.
Well, no, but I'm thinking that if we're following this template,
Yeah,
and this template started with 50-50, and we have one buffer, it sounds like it's gonna be no more than 50. I don't see the reason to have the second buffer, that's all. Because what we really wanna do, this is a first time zoning law, this doesn't mean that this can't be revised as things get complex, but for first time zoning law, what we're trying to do is guarantee a buffer.
Mhm.
In
totally
the
agree
most
with that.
reasonable way we can.
Yeah.
And I think also we've learned a lot, and I know the zoning commission learned a lot as well. It decided basically, they've done a lot of work, and it was a little bit. And I think you would agree with me, Bruce, it was a little bit uncertain how it finally wanted to come down on this. But it had done so much work that it realized that it would be helpful for us to give it another pass. That's basically what they recommended that we do. And my hearing all of this, I mean, this is just personal, but you know, since I participated in all of this, we can never talk. I always thought for first time buffer, 100 is too much. And it easily can then be extended farther down the line.
so the intermittent streams are already just the inner buffer area only. Right, so you're
Yes.
saying to make the perennial streams the same as the intermittent streams. So
That's
that's what you're proposing.
what I'm proposing. I'm just trying
think
to keep it
that's
somewhat reasonable and
Okay.
simple.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't find this.
So I like your proposal that at the next meeting, we come prepared to decide on this.
Okay.
And we could pull together comparative information, but I mean, I agree. I feel like, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I think we need to think about it, but
And then we'll be
I
better
think-
prepared than to address some of the minutia.
Mm-hmm.
If there is one. If there's one buffer. It's gonna take care, probably, there's a few things that I had noticed that I thought we might want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that stuff will become irrelevant to a certain extent.
Mhm.
And then the only thing I'll throw out, which I did last time too, but I think that the ag exemptions for this, I do not think are appropriate. I mean, I'm saying that as a supporter of ag. Whatever is regulated by ag and markets, obviously, we can't touch anyway, so I'm not making that argument. But I think it's important to know, and I had, some exchange with Bill about this as well,
Mhm.
is that the way ag is defined in this zoning law is far more broad than that, which is also a positive thing in an effort to broadly define agriculture.
Mhm.
However, agricultural and farm operations, as they are defined broadly in this law, are exempted from all water protection, which
Mhm.
Yeah.
is nonsensical to me. And I would, we can bring this to the ag committee, we can have these conversations, I would defend this and, say this in front of a whole room of farmers, like, we all know that we need to be, we either need to be protecting the water or not protecting the water. I don't really care what,
It's
like,
fundamental in ag and markets thing.
but,
So,
but what I'm saying is the way this is defined
But what are you
is
trying
not
to
ag
regulate?
and markets.
How is,
Why do you try to regulate something that 90% of your pollution's coming from something that you can't even touch?
What's that?
is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just being a reporter.
Right.
It's not accomplishing anything.
You're saying you're agreeing that it is coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is we've defined ag more broadly, and so we may have,
We have.
it may be appropriate
Right
to
here,
point out
it's defined
some
here.
of these
Yeah.
recommendations or regulations for, in those cases, is that right? Or,
well, I mean,
I'm just making a general statement that I think when we look at like what the exemptions are,
Mm-hmm.
the exemptions are, we have people who are like, I want to put an addition on my house. I want a deck. I want a gazebo. I want a whatever. And they feel restricted because we're saying they can't do it. But then we can have an agricultural operation, with, whatever manure management or mismanagement they want. And like, we're saying in our zoning law that they're exempted from worrying about the water, which to me is just like, I want this to either do something for water or
Leave it alone.
or leave it alone.
but what we learned throughout the time on the zoning commission is that ag and markets sets the regulations for designated ag, and zoning cannot touch that.
No, so every place that it says ag in here, we need to change the language to say, as defined by ag and markets 25 AA
Mhm,
law.
that's fine.
Okay,
Because as it is now, I can put my pile of horse manure in the stream and I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
It does, in the definition, agricultural farm operation, it does refer to that article.
great.
Just to let you know, I mean, so if you went from the water overlay section and went like, okay, what is an agricultural operation? And you go here and figure it out, and it defines, farm operations as.
That's why you have the
defined
definitions.
pursuant To
Yeah,
You know.
that's good.
the, so.
And that is something that ag and markets referred back to us So they suggested three clarifications for those definitions.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, yes, and. Anyway, sure.
I hear the concern.
But I mean, I'm just saying, like, this goes back to the whole definitions of like, everyone's fine with the definitions. Well, we're not fine with the definitions because the definitions are right now like failing us. So I
don't feel like they're failing us. I think we're just trying to work it out. At least that's how I feel. I don't feel like they're failing us. But I do have a question. So like about the ag stuff while we're on it. About the ag definition.
Could we?
But maybe I should do that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
'cause we're not prepared to do that.
That's true. Okay. I'm going to write down my questions.
Catherine, I think if there are specific definitions that need attention, we need to pay attention to specific definitions.
Okay.
Absolutely.
well, we should start with the ones that ag and market can possibly think,
Well,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
Well, but I was gonna have.
It's A, right?
it's it's at the beginning, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was just gonna have Nan rewrite those definitions according to ag markets suggestion, and we can work from there.
Okay,
But
So can I make another then procedural suggestion?
You know.
Have we agreed to meet on Tuesdays? Every other Tuesday,
At 5, I thought, right?
What's
5 to 7?
5 to 7?
Mhm.
So if we do, then what I recommend that we do is finish this discussion.
Yep.
But then I would recommend that we start with Articles 3 and Articles 4. I'd suggest not worrying about fussing with the definitions until later, if consideration of these other articles and identify certain definitions that we think need to be fussed with. So we don't go in circles. So what I'd recommend is that we begin with, after we do the water, and we might be able to do it, I suspect we're gonna be able to do more than the water in the next
Mhm.
is then begin with Article 3, which is lending districts, because I know also that Catherine raised a certain issue about those districts that she wanted to discuss for sure.
So,
And then move right from there to uses and dimensions. Because what we do in those two articles is then going to be pretty much determine what would need to be tweaked from there on out. Does that sound like reasonable?
it sounds like enough.
So then what I would further recommend is that we review, especially Article 2, the definitions, 3, the districts. And if we have specific concerns, maybe we share those by email, just in an index form. So that then when we turn to our discussion, we'll know where the pressure points are.
Mhm.
We can go right to those. Does that sound reasonable?
Great,
Yeah. Great.
that sounds good.
So just for clarity, the
Poor thing. You have to take these notes.
second and fourth Tuesdays, is that what you're saying, or just next Tuesday at 5 for now?
I would go second and fourth Tuesdays for a couple of months to see how we do.
I'm definitely good with that.
The problem is if we do it only once a month.
Yeah.
It takes you a lot of time to catch up again at the beginning.
No, I definitely am game for that.
So
So,
after we do this for a few sessions, we'll have a good sense of
Mhm.
tempo and where
And
we're
be able
going.
to get through it faster, I think.
We'll just know, we'll have a good sense. So the other question that I have in regards to this for Jesse is whether we can, Jesse, are we allowed to take our own notes, our own minutes? When we're doing this.
I'm not positive on that. I know, like I said last time, the town of Richford calls their weekly meetings, working sessions, and they're open to the public and they do not have a clerk, but
Mhm.
Because that's,
I'm
these
not
will be.
under that impression, so I have to get that
Okay,
where,
Yeah,
because these will be
we'll figure
working
that out.
sessions, these will be working sessions.
right,
And the zoning commission did that quite well.
right.
And.
Yep.
Because I don't want you to be burdened with the minutia of these discussions when what really needs to be recorded are changes
votes
that
on
we
the changes.
make in the law.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'll find out.
I
So if we can find that out, that'd be
am
good.
pretty sure that's
I think so.
doable. So.
That would, I think we would all prefer that, right?
I would.
Yeah.
But these be zoomed.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Great, okay. Do we have a plan?
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan.
Tim, if you're talking with Dan, what about the definitions of stream channel boundaries? I mean, I look at some of the creeks along and there's huge undercuts into what you might call the
What definition are you looking at?
upstream bank.
Why don't we just hold off on the definitions until we can do them? You know.
Okay.
In a
Yeah, I
set.
think that's part of the idea is that we use the map and then people go out and look at it because the creeks move. Right?
Yeah.
And so that it's gotta be looked at. I mean,
That's one of the interesting things that the TEC exchange with Bill noted. You know, that you have to take into consideration. For other wetlands, that the creeks move. I mean, actually,
you
we
have
know
to-
they don't move that
you
much
have
because we
to
know
do-
how they move.
Right.
They move, but they can't move
Banks Road
5 to 10
moves,
feet.
totally
They can move 5 to 10 feet in a year,
Yeah.
but they can't.
Right, so you have to do the delineation.
Yeah.
So. Great, okay,
Okay, great.
all right. Where are we?
that's good.
This the meeting?
Moving on,
The supervisor.
offer a resolution, a couple of resolutions, on emergency services, so, offer resolution designated May 21 to 27 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical service is a vital public service, and whereas the members of the emergency medical services team are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine, and whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of the emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week, therefore be it resolved, the Caroline Town Board hereby proclaims the week of May 21 to 27, 2023 as EMS Services Week. Seconded by him, right? Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Offer resolution designating May 24th as Emergency Medical Services for Children's Day. You want me to read the whole resolution?
No.
Okay, do I have a second? Yeah, seconded by Catherine. And if there are no questions, I'll call for a vote. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great. So just expressing support for those things. And then offer resolution to update the employee health insurance terms for the employee handbook. And so this isn't a change, this is just creating text to put into the employee handbook based on policies we've established.
Okay.
So section 806 is including the town supervisor is eligible for medical insurance. Should he or she work 30 hours or more a week.
That was already in there. I thought we already did that.
We did do that. That was resolution 31 of 2023. But now I have, these are going into the employee handbook, so.
Okay.
And then the next one is the reformulation of the the conversion of the health reimbursement arrangement to offering a health savings account. So that that's understood for new employees, so. And we codified this by the by resolution 128 of 2022. So, and I realized looking at the employee handbook the other day, it just had the old language in there, so it was confusing. I want to change that, so. Any other questions or? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you. I'm gonna hold off on the transfers I put forward. I wanna re-examine them and do it right, so I'll do that next time. Anyway. They're related to, I'm happy to say, if any people examining the town bills, we had the bill for the highway department, or no, for the fire department lights, LED lights, and we had the bill from NIPA for the street light
I was wondering about that.
conversion. So I got both of those,
That was a lot of money.
which means that I'm gonna be able to wrap the grant up by June 30th, almost certainly, so that's. So I want to make sure these transfers
All right.
put everything back in order, so I'm gonna look at it again, so. I will offer a resolution for the payment of town bills, to approve the vouchers for payment of town bills. And somewhere I put it in here, for the amounts of 20,175.22 for A fund, 71,549.76 for DA fund, and 44,225.90 for the streetlight fund. Seconded by Cal. And also point out the streetlight or the DA fund includes the $50,000 annual payment for one of the snowplow trucks. So. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you. And I would like to offer approval of the minutes of May 3rd. And to say that I concur with Tim, that the minutes were in great shape.
Yes, thank you, Josie. You did a good
Yeah.
job.
So the minutes of May 3rd are hereby approved. And with that, I would like to offer a motion to move into executive session. To discuss personnel issues.
Mhm.
Seconded by Cal, did you say that? Yeah. Okay, and I will call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. So that's at approximately 8:55.
54.
54.
Okay.